The ice cracked like a whispered warning beneath her boots. It wasn't a clean sound, more like a low groan that rose up from the belly of the frozen river and vibrated through her bones. The wind cut sharp across the valley, carrying the dry scent of pine and cold stone. Nora Hale tightened her jaw, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders as the weight of winter pressed down upon her. Somewhere behind her, the wind carried the faint echo of a man's voice calling her name. Rough, deep, and desperate. She didn't dare turn around. The river stretched wide before her, white as bone, a mirror of the endless Montana sky. The snow had crusted over the surface, hiding the danger beneath, black water that waited like a patient predator. She'd crossed it a dozen times before in milder winters, but today was different. The thaw had come early, the ice uncertain and moody. And yet she had to go. She had to reach the far bank before the night swallowed the last of the light. Her horse had gone down hours ago, slipping on a slope of shale and ice. She'd heard the sickening snap, the animal's cry echoing through the canyon, and then there was nothing but her own ragged breath and the crunch of snow as she walked away. The storm clouds were crawling low now, bruised and heavy. She could smell snow coming again. Then, his voice again. "Nora!" It came from the trees on the western ridge. She froze. She knew that voice, knew it even though it carried across wind and distance and years. Cade Callahan. Her pulse stumbled. She turned her head slowly, scanning the tree line until she saw him, a lone figure on horseback, hat pulled low, a scarf around his neck, his coat dusted with frost. He looked like he'd ridden straight out of the storm, and for a heartbeat she thought she must be dreaming. She hadn't seen him in nearly 5 years, not since the fire that took the ranch, the fire that took her father and Cade's chance to stay. He kicked his horse forward, hooves throwing up clumps of snow, and she felt a sudden ache deep in her chest, part relief, part fear. He stopped near the edge of the river, lifting a gloved hand. "Nora, don't move," he shouted, voice cracking through the cold. "The ice isn't thick enough." But she was already halfway across. Her foot slid a little, the ice groaning again beneath her skirt. "I can't go back," she called. Her voice trembled in the open air. "The ridge is too steep. The storm's closing in. I have to make it across." Cade dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots sinking into the snow. "Then you listen to me," he said, stepping closer but keeping to the bank. "You move slow, hands flat. Crawl if you have to." She took another step. The sound that followed made her heart stop. A deep splintering crack. She dropped to her knees, palms pressed flat against the ice, breath hitching. A jagged vein spread out from beneath her, glinting darkly like the edge of a blade. "Don't move!" Cade barked. Her heart hammered in her ears. "Cade, Hands flat," he repeated. "Crawl to my voice, slow." There was something about his tone, calm but edged with fear, that pulled her back from the edge of panic. She focused on it, on him, the only steady thing in this vast, breaking world. She began to crawl. The ice moaned beneath her weight. Each inch felt like an eternity. Her palms were raw, her skirt soaked through, the cold biting up her arms like fire. She didn't look down, couldn't. She kept her eyes locked on Cade. He had crouched near the bank, one knee in the snow, his hand outstretched. The last rays of the setting sun caught the metal of his belt buckle, glinting like a promise. "Good," he said quietly. "You're doing good, Nora. Keep coming." The ice cracked again and closer this time. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. "How did you find me?" she managed to whisper. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Tracked your horse's prints for near 10 miles. Figured you'd be stubborn enough to cross the river instead of waiting out the night." She wanted to snap back, to tell him she wasn't stubborn, just desperate. But she couldn't spare the breath. The surface beneath her hand gave a warning sigh. She froze. Cade's eyes darkened. "Don't stop," he said, voice low. "If you stop, you'll sink. Keep your weight spread." Her fingers trembled. "I can't." "Yes, you can. You always could." The words hit her harder than the wind. For a moment, she wasn't on the ice anymore. She was 16 again, riding beside him through tall grass, sunlight on her hair, Cade laughing as the river sparkled beside them. Back before everything burned, before every good thing cracked under its own weight. She blinked hard, the image gone, replaced by the endless frozen expanse. He took another step toward her, boots crunching in the snow. "You're nearly there. Just another few feet." But the ice had other plans. With a sound like a gunshot, a sheet split beneath her, and she plunged shoulder deep into freezing water. Her scream tore through the valley. The shock stole her breath, the current dragging at her legs. "Nora!" Cade lunged forward, dropping flat on his stomach and sliding across the ice. His arm shot out, hand grasping hers before the river could take her. "Hold on!" he shouted. The cold was blinding. Her lungs seized. The water clawed at her skirt, pulling. She could feel the ice cutting into her wrists as she clung to his glove. "Don't you let go!" he growled, jaw clenched, muscles straining. "You hear me?" Her teeth chattered too hard to speak. He inched backward, dragging her inch by inch toward safety, every movement accompanied by the groan of ice, threatening to give way under them both. "Nora, look at me," he said, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "I got you. You're not going under on my watch." And somehow she believed him. With a final heave, he pulled her free of the river, both of them collapsing in a tangle of wet clothes and steam-like breath. She coughed hard, water spilling from her lips, fingers clutching his sleeve. He pressed a hand to her back until her coughing eased, then shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Fool woman," he muttered, voice trembling just enough to betray the fear underneath. "You could have died out there." She looked up at him, eyes wide and glassy. "I thought you were gone." "Been gone a long time," he said softly. "But I never stopped looking." For a long moment, neither spoke. The world around them went still. The wind quieted. The sky deepened to violet, and the first flakes of snow began to fall. She shivered, clutching his coat tighter. "There's a cabin not far from here," she said faintly. "Half buried under the pines. Belonged to my father." He nodded, rising to his feet and offering her his hand. "Then that's where we're going." She hesitated before taking it. His glove was rough, familiar, grounding. He pulled her up gently, steadying her against him when her knees nearly buckled. The two of them began the slow trek toward the tree line, the sound of the frozen river fading behind them. Cade walked close, one arm braced around her, his eyes scanning the gathering storm. For the first time in years, she felt something warm stir beneath all the cold. Not safety, not quite hope, but something alive. The night would be long. The storm would be cruel. But for now, she wasn't alone. And deep inside, the part of her that had once sworn she'd never trust him again began to thaw, just a little. The cabin was older than memory. Its roof sagged under the weight of years and snow, and its logs were silvered with frost, but to Nora, it still looked like a heartbeat in the wilderness. Cade pushed the door open with his shoulder, the wood groaning like something waking from a long sleep. Inside, the air smelled of dust, pine, and a faint trace of her father. Leather oil and tobacco, ghosts of a time that refused to fade. He guided her in gently, closing the door against the howling wind. The silence that followed was almost painful. Only the ticking sound of melting ice from her skirt broke it, dripping onto the wooden floor in slow rhythm. "Sit," Cade said quietly. "By the hearth." She obeyed, teeth still chattering, breath fogging in front of her. Cade moved with quiet urgency, striking a match and feeding kindling into the cold stove. The flame caught, flared, then built into a low orange pulse that began to lick away the chill. Nora held her hands toward it, feeling life creep slowly back into her fingers. "I thought this place would have collapsed by now," she murmured. Cade gave a faint, wry smile. "Some things are built better than folks give them credit for." He took off his coat and draped it over a chair, the firelight catching the wet leather on his sleeves. His eyes moved across the room, to the cracked window, the old rifle above the door, the faded map still tacked to the... "All looks near the same," he said. "It should," Nora replied softly. "I never could bring myself to change it." Cade turned toward her, his face shadowed by the flicker of firelight. "You came back here to what? Live in the ashes?" She met his gaze, defiance rising in her chest. "I came back because this is all that's left." The fire popped sharply, filling the silence that followed. He crouched beside the stove, stirring the flame higher. "You always did run toward ghosts instead of away from them." She looked away. "You always did like judging from a distance." That drew a low chuckle from him, dry and tired. "Fair enough." For a while, the only sound was the storm outside, snow whispering against the window panes. Nora's shivering eased as the warmth spread through the small cabin. But inside her, another kind of cold lingered, one that no fire could melt. Cade poured water from a canteen into a dented pot and set it on the stove. The gesture was simple, but the memory behind it wasn't. She could almost see them again. The two of them younger, laughing, fighting, dreaming by this same fire. Before the night, everything changed. Before the fire that took her father, and the man she thought Cade was. Her voice came out softer than she meant. You shouldn't have come. He didn't answer at first. Then quietly, maybe not. But you'd be at the bottom of that river if I hadn't. I didn't ask for your help. No, he said, looking into the flames. You never do. The wind slammed against the cabin, rattling the shutters. Nora flinched. Cade glanced at her, his expression unreadable. How long have you been staying here? 2 weeks, she said. Since I got word the land's being sold. Some company from Helena wants to build a dam upriver. I wanted to see it one last time before it's gone. Cade's brow furrowed. A dam? That'd flood half the valley. She nodded. Everything my father built. Everything we knew. He stood slowly, jaw tight. You think they'll listen if you stand in the way of progress? Maybe not, she said. But I won't watch it disappear without trying. Cade walked to the window, looking out at the river, now hidden beneath a white haze of snow. You always were your father's daughter. And you weren't? She asked quietly. He stiffened but didn't turn. I stopped being his son the day he told me to leave. The words hung in the air like frost. Nora's heart twisted. He told you to go because he blamed you for the fire. But I never believed it, Cade. I never did. He turned then, eyes dark, voice low. Doesn't matter what you believed. Truth don't change for belief. She stood, moving closer to him. Then tell me the truth. What really happened that night? He looked down at her, at the woman who had once been his whole world, and for a long moment he said nothing. The fire crackled, the wind sighed, and then he spoke. There was a storm, same as this one. I'd been out riding fence all day. When I came back, the barn was already burning. Your pa was inside trying to cut loose the horses. I went in after him, stupid, blind with smoke. Got him out the first time, but he went back in for the ledgers. Said he couldn't let the bank take the place. Cade's voice broke, rough as gravel. Roof came down before I could stop him. Nora's breath caught. You stayed behind after that night? He shook his head. Didn't have the right. Folks in town said I set the fire to cover my debts. Sheriff never cleared my name. So I left before they ran me out proper. Her throat tightened. And you never came back? I did once, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Came back a year later. Saw you out here working the fields alone. You looked strong. You didn't need me muddying it up again. Nora felt tears sting her eyes. You should have come anyway. Silence again, heavy, raw. The firelight danced between them, flickering across old scars. Outside, thunder rumbled far away. The storm was rolling closer. Cade turned back toward the window. We'll need to brace the door. Snow's picking up fast. They moved together, not speaking, just working. The rhythm of it felt familiar, almost like they'd never stopped being a team. He stacked wood against the frame while she checked the shutters. Her movements brisk but steady. When it was done, Cade pulled the pot off the stove and poured steaming water into 2 metal cups. He handed one to her. Drink, you'll warm faster. She took it, their fingers brushing for a moment. A jolt ran through her, unexpected and sharp. The years between them vanished in that touch. They sat across from each other on opposite sides of the hearth. The fire threw gold across their faces, softening the hard edges time had carved there. Do you still blame yourself? She asked after a long while. He looked up, eyes tired. Every day. Then stop. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. You saved him once. That counts for something. He gave a bitter laugh. Not enough. Maybe not for you, she said, but it's enough for me. The words hung between them. And for the first time that night, his expression softened. He set his cup down slowly, leaning forward. Nora, I ain't the same man I was. I've done things I can't undo. She smiled faintly, weary but warm. Neither of us are who we were. But maybe that's the point. The wind outside roared like the voice of the mountain, and snow began to pile against the window pane. Cade stood and fed more wood to the fire, watching the flames lick higher. You'll leave when the storm breaks? He asked. She hesitated. I don't know yet. You should. The company won't stop for sentiment. Then maybe they'll have to go through me. He turned, meeting her eyes. They might. She smiled faintly. Good, I've got a stubborn streak. He chuckled. You always did. The tension eased. For the first time, they both laughed. Small, real, fragile. Laughter that felt like sunlight breaking through cloud. Hours passed. The storm raged, the fire burned low, and conversation softened into memory. Half-spoken recollections of wild horses, summer nights, and the kind of dreams that used to seem unbreakable. As dawn crept pale and thin through the frosted glass, Cade rose. The storm had calmed. The valley outside lay buried under a new world of white. Nora watched him pull on his coat. "Where will you go?" He paused at the door. "There's a man in Helena owes me a favor. Maybe I can talk to him about that dam. Maybe stop it before it starts." She stood too, heart pounding. "You'd do that?" "After everything?" He turned, gave her that same small smile, the one she remembered from long ago. "You once told me a man's not done until he fixes what he broke." She took a step toward him. "Then you'd better come back this time." He hesitated, then reached out and touched her cheek, his glove brushing her skin like a memory, if the river holds. And then he was gone, disappearing into the pale light and the quiet hum of wind. Nora stood in the doorway long after his figure vanished beyond the trees. The world glittered like glass around her. The river, frozen in silver, wound through the valley, silent now, but alive beneath the ice. She wrapped her father's old shawl tighter around her shoulders and turned back to the fire. The cabin was still warm, still breathing. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The ice had groaned beneath her weight, but it hadn't broken her. Not this time.